Do you know how to sing is the title of this class. Now, I don't think I have to explain or elaborate on the nature of song and melody. I'm sure any one of you, without any training, relates to music. We live in a musical age where both audio, CDs, and YouTube, video, all kinds of ability to pipe music into your ears, into your being all the time. And most of us know the experience of unplugging and just putting a headset on, and just being transported to another time and place through a song, a melody. We all have our favorite melodies, different songs that different moods, songs that remind us of a very beautiful past, songs that bring us to tears. Some of us sing along, whether in the shower or in other times we like to hum. Everybody's got their little musical quirks, so we're not going to go around and compare notes. But there's a reason I mention it, because song, melody, music is from the things that are given that touch somebody. And in this complex world in which we live, with the different challenges we face, everyone in their own way, personal challenges, the fears, the inhibitions, the insecurities we have to deal with, then the challenges of dealing with other people, relationships, whether it's familial relationships, meaning with parents or siblings, or it's romantic relationships, or just relationships with whoever our colleagues or co-workers are. And then with society as a whole, we have a complex life. And it's hard sometimes, like someone lost in the woods, it's hard to make sense of what is right, what is wrong. Sometimes it's all jumbled together. You like somebody, then you like some of them, you don't like another part of them. And when we're in this entangled, especially in our own labyrinth of emotions, it's very hard to distinguish and say, okay, this I know, this I don't know. It's all complicated. So that's why it's important in life to have, we'll call them bearings. Think of them like coordinates. It's like, let's say you get lost in the woods, you made a signpost, this tree, this branch, this path. The same is true psychologically in our lives. The more signposts and the more coordinates we can establish. So when we're confused and we're lost, and everybody has moments they are, you have something to hold on to that helps you maneuver, to navigate. Like being lost at sea, or being lost in any type of journey. So it's important to establish certain things, and these become reality checks that help you regain your bearings, regain your direction. When you don't have that, what happens is, when things get confusing, all of you gets confused and there's no way out. And this is especially true when we have to go through the more traumatic experiences in life, like pain, or loss, or death. So no one should ever know of such experiences, but we go through them. And that's when we really, if we don't have those bearings, that's when it gets really, because it's overwhelming, because it's not just a regular day, you're not just neutral. You're dealing with a whole new series of emotions and feelings that suddenly overwhelm us. So the more you prepare, the more you, in a sense, when you set out on a journey, you want to have your GPS, so to speak, your coordinates aligned, the easier it is to navigate through the ups and downs of life. I see this all the time in counseling people, talking to people. So when things are going relatively smoothly is one thing, but then the relationship, a marriage, is on the rocks, facing new crisis. This happened, that happened. Small things, big things. Small things that become big things. Becomes one big mess. And when you find immediately those that have certain givens, certain foundations in place, you can work with something. It doesn't mean a foundation is enough. You can have a foundation of a building, but if it's in place, when a storm strikes, so it may have stripped away one of the floors, may have stripped away some parts of the building, but you have something to build upon. But if the foundations are weak or wavering and inconsistent, or there are no foundations in place, then you have nothing to work with. The whole thing is one big mess. It's one vicious cycle. So these cracks become they become more exposed and more challenging in situations where there's a crisis. Once the storm strikes, it's very difficult to start reinforcing your underpinnings and so on. So psychologically, this is also true. All of us have cracks in our psyche. Everybody has cracks. We all have our quirks. We all have our inconsistencies. We have our flaws, so to speak. Some of us may have short fuses. Some may have long fuses, too long. So, different reactions that we picked up as children, or to cope or to survive under the whatever circumstances we grew up. We adapt. We're resilient. So when things are going relatively well, so the resilience of the human spirit is such that it can tolerate a certain amount of cracks. But then when there's an earthquake, I'm using a metaphorically speaking, or a volcano, or a tsunami, something serious, then suddenly these little cracks that would be insignificant on any average day suddenly become the source of the problem. They're all analyzing how the Titanic sank. What was it that ultimately caused its demise? Obviously hitting iceberg is a serious thing. But what was it really? What buckled? And it came down to some people's analysis was the way that certain strappings, certain metals that connected different parts of the ship, there were certain compromises made in certain type of substances. If you remember a few years ago, it was the Challenger that exploded when it took off. One of the right. And there too, they found, what was it? It came down to one little...
O-ring.
Right. What was it called?
O-ring.
O-ring. A ring. A bull ring it's called? Yeah. Literally a ring that you'd think, okay, big thing, it's like a little reinforcer of this. But when under extreme pressure, suddenly a little misconnection is a major problem. Same is true psychologically. Our bodies can take that much. They know today, shock. Physical shock, for example. You can tolerate certain things. When it's too much, suddenly the little cracks become serious problems. And emotionally, psychologically, this is very, very true. So obviously, we all would love to preempt and try to understand those bearings so we can reinforce them. Times come when we'll have to do with greater challenges. You have more to work with. As I said, the example I was giving was a journey. You want signposts. You need every signpost all the time? No, but the more signposts you have, the more you have something to hold on to when there's a question, when there's a doubt. You could really say this is the essence of good education. If our parents and schools educate us well, they're not just teaching you facts, they're teaching you methodology. That when you're faced with a particular situation, you have a method, a method to this madness, a method to resolve an issue. How do I solve a problem? How do I deal with a crisis? What happens when I'm in doubt? What happens when someone's very convincing? How do I know for sure that's what to do? Take this road. Move this way, that way, not make a move. We all face these all the time. So the more armed we are with information, with discretion, the ability when to be skeptical, when to give someone the benefit of the doubt, stuff like that. This is all part of healthy tools that we all would love to be able to build, which doesn't guarantee, but it minimizes. It creates a situation where it's far easier and more predictable that you're going to be able to handle the challenge or the storm, because you have more to go with. You ever see just the gear that any soldier wears, or for that matter, an astronaut in space? It's a whole art. Everything he needs under dire circumstances, in case it's very rainy. When there's no food, canteen. All these little things that are necessary in the wild, in unpredictable circumstances, and it's all been worked out. It's all down to science, literally. So life is also that way. Life is a battlefield, and the resources we have is all we have going for us. These are our faculties, our intelligence, our emotions, our feelings, our skills, our tools, both from the physical faculties to the more ethereal ones. How to get out of a jam, how to get into a situation, how to get out of a situation, how to maneuver, how to navigate. So essentially the real good education is training a person to maximize, to sharpen, refine these tools. As I said, the bearings. This brings me back after this relatively longer introduction to music. So what's so powerful about music, besides the fact that it touches us, is that it's a given. Things that you know have impact on you, and almost without any effort, you know that there's something there, there's some power that it has. Music is one of those things. It's a language that speaks to us. No one really knows exactly how it speaks to us, but it speaks to us. I don't have to tell you. I don't have to even play a song right now. You know immediately what means the word resonance. That when you'll hear a song tonight or tomorrow, it can it can change your mood. It can put you into a mood. It reminds you of things. What is this language of song? And we know it's not just words, because it could be melody without lyrics. It's a tune. It's some type of melodic rhythm that in some way touches us in a place that just regular language does not. And psychologists, those today that use music as music therapy, all wonder. They don't really know an answer to this. What is music? Why is it that newborn children react to music? Why is it that children in the mother's womb react to music? There's evidence. Playing music that the fetus, I mean obviously not in its earlier stages, later stages, will move to a song. How does it know that it's a song? It never heard it before. There's enough mystery about language. How is it that by the age 2, 3, 4 years old, the child is speaking? We're not talking about the repertoire of words. We're just talking about the power of speech. It's very hard. People don't really know why. And we know that the speech that it hears from its parents, let's say it's Spanish or French or English or Hebrew, so that's what kind of speech they will speak. But the power of speech, the ability to formulate words, whatever language it may be, is a mystery. Because where does the child have that ability to do so? So in the Kabbalistic writings, it says that because every child is born with letters. We have letters in our soul. Not necessarily letters of a particular language, ability to express. And what you need to be taught is simply how to formulate those words, how to actually give them sound. But you already have the ability to communicate. For example, babies communicate through tears. They create through different sounds. Today they have different individuals who are actually experts at the several sounds of children that they cry out for need, when they're in pain, when they're happy. No one taught them these sounds. It just seems to be part and parcel of the human soul, that it has certain ways to express itself. A little later, the sound is no longer a cry. It could be asking, actually saying the right words. But music is far bigger mystery because the impact that it has on us. So the mystics and the Kabbalists, Jewish mysticism, for them it's not a surprise. They say actually the natural language of a human being, of a soul, is music. It's words that are superimposed. In heaven, before a soul comes to earth, all it does is sing. Imagine communication 24/7, only through song. Because music is the spirit. It's a spiritual language. And that's why it resonates for us so much. It's a language of harmony. It's a language of resonance. It's a language of rhythm. Speaking is also language. We could communicate ideas. But someone can say some words to you, and it will ring hollow to you. It'll be meaningless to you. You'll feel the person is insincere. You can have, as they say, words that go out of someone's mouth, go into one ear and out the other. It could be words from the heart, enter the heart. Because then it's like music. There's something about, it's not just the words are coming with a care, with an empathy, with compassion. So understanding music and song and the power of melody can be a tremendous tool in our own personal growth, because in a way it mirrors as closely as possible the rhythm of your own soul. That's why it's not a surprise that music is a very powerful type of therapy when used properly. No surprise that a Shabbat is related to Zmirat, to sing songs. Because Shabbat is a day of the Spirit. 6 days of the week we're immersed in our material lives, and one day we travel back into our souls to be at least amount possible involved in the material world, in producing, in negotiating, in handling, in trading, and so on, and to focus on the inside. So what's the best tool to focus on the inside? Again, music, song. In Judaism, there was actually a tribe. They were the composers. They were called the Levites. They were the composers. They would compose melodies. In the temple, Moses was a Levite on the Shevet tribe Levi. But it says in some holy books, Rabbi writes this, that had the Jews not sinned and built the golden calf after Sinai, all tribes would have been composers. Which means we'd always be speaking in the melody. When a child hears the words, I love you, said sincerely by its parent, whether it's the child already understands the language or doesn't, or the child picks it up in the eyes, in the vibe that the adult gives, the child is hearing music. That's music to the ears, because the child is nurtured by it. Music is the language of the soul, and the language that nurtures the soul. Now today music has become an industry. It's an industry. For many it's just an escape. It's a way to just escape and shut down everything else and just run into that world. Music, dance. And you're left. The question is what happens after the honeymoon, so to speak, after the song ends. When the music dies, as they say. What happens then? Often we're left again just very hungry again, because it doesn't really transform. It just transported you for a moment. No different than any drug may do. I'm not suggesting it's necessarily destructive, because it doesn't it has any side effects. But what we're going to want to discuss here, how music could be an integral part of your own growth, and how songs, if you really know how to listen to them, don't just listen to them for entertainment or to escape. Or do they say some sing to remember and some sing to forget? Or is it to dance to remember or dance to forget, whatever it may be? But you actually see song and music as your language. It's your most natural language. And you want to be around people who their words sound like songs to you all the time. Everything they say is infused, saturated with love. And other people, on the other hand, who their words are like knives, or let's put it this way, neutral at best. That their words don't resonate and don't have anything that changes you except the day-to-day negotiations that most of our words are usually used for. To negotiate deals, come to agreements. I need this, you need this, I'm buying that. So the Torah wants to acclimate us, train us into being more soulful people. And soulful people means people whose words sound more like melodies than they do like words. It doesn't always come out as a song, but its message is melodic. It touches a rhythm inside of you. And you all know what I'm talking about, because when you hear such words, it touches you. I was touched. I was moved. It resonated with me. What does the word resonance mean? Resonance means that there's you have a chord inside of you, and something is said, and that chord seems to vibrate when that's said. It resonates. In other words, you have something already there, except it was like asleep or dormant, and something said or something sung. It gets something inside of you going. That's what resonance means. So that's the objective. And why am I chose this topic of all times? I mean, there's a Shabbos Shira during the winter in New York, winter time is Shabbos Shira. The Shabbos called Shabbos of Song. Different time of the year. It's usually around January, February. We're very far from there. I decided to talk about it because we're in the month of Elul, which is called the month of love. Ani l'dadi, I am to my beloved is to me. And when you read the Haftarahs of these weeks, for those that don't know what a Haftarah is that we know there's a Torah reading. Well, I should begin. If you don't know what a Torah reading is, let's start with that. Let's start, what is a Torah? And what's a reading? But I'm sure most of you are familiar, at least technically, that the Torah is called the Constitution of Judaism. It's really the Constitution of life, called a blueprint for life given to us at Sinai, God's mandate, blueprint. And the Torah has a component to it that's called the written Torah, which is made up of 52 chapters that correspond to the 52 weeks of the year, and thus every week, every Shabbat, we read the appropriate chapter. Just for the record, to be more thorough, every chapter is made up of 7 sections. So in effect, every day of the 7 days of the week has its section of the Torah that corresponds to that day. Now there was a time during the Roman reign empire where the Romans, for their own good reason, decided to decree and forbid the study and reading of Torah. This didn't happen quite common in those good days, the good old days, quote unquote. So the Jews, who were very resourceful, always came up with some way around this decree. Okay, we won't read the Torah. But they took the word Torah literally, the 5 books of Moses, the Chumash. There's a whole thing called Tanakh, the prophets and the writings. So what they did was, those weeks, they found in the prophets a similar story that's discussed in the Chumash, in the Torah, as we call it. They said, okay, we're not reading Torah, we're reading Nevi'im, prophets. The truth is, it's all under the banner of Torah. But the Romans didn't know that. So technically, they found a loophole. And so every week they would read the Haftarah, they would find similar themes to what's discussed in the chapter. Then, of course, as always happens, the Romans are gone and we're here. So the decree is gone, so what do you do now? But since you started something positive, Jews never give something up just because it came for a negative reason, but they started studying something. So what do? We read the Parsha and the Haftarah. They didn't want to abolish it just because the Romans are gone. We started doing something. So we went back to reading the Torah, and at the end we read the Haftarah, which is itself a lesson in life. That often we compensate for something that's missing in our lives. Then when we get it back, many of us say, I don't need it anymore. But if it's a good thing, why would you give it up? Do twice as good. In other words, you use darkness and turn it into light. So the Haftarah is read till this day, even though it's thousands of years since the Romans are gone, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. But that's the Jewish people, with all their strengths and unique skills. Don't just survive, you turn the negative into a positive. That which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So we have the Torah, the Parsha, and the Haftarah. And the Haftarah, as I said, is of the themes and so on. They say Nietzsche wrote, God is dead, and God said, Nietzsche is dead. So the Romans said the Jews will die, and now the Romans are dead, and we're here to talk about it. And not only that, we can thank them for giving us the Haftarah. So that's what's left of the Roman Empire. The Haftarahs we read, and a few other things that we've picked up here and there due to different persecutions. Okay? So we are preserving the memory of the Romans, but on our terms. Okay? Fine. Which is, I feel good saying that. Who finally prevails? It's the bottom line. And not that we wish any ill on anyone. We didn't destroy the Roman Empire; they destroyed themselves. Arrogance always tends to do that, as many historians have pointed out. All those that tried to destroy the Jews ended up being destroyed themselves. You could say miraculous reasons because God protects us, or you could even say it on a practical level. Had Hitler, Yimach Shemo, chose only to target the Jews, unfortunately, God forbid, if you want to say it, he may have succeeded. Problem was, he didn't just target the Jews, he targeted everybody. Anyone that was not, went after the Russians, after the British, after all the others who decided were non-Aryans, which to us was actually an advantage, because that's how it works. What has Churchill said about appeasement? Appeasement is feeding the crocodiles in the hope you'll be eaten last. If someone's consuming, if you kill one person that's innocent, rest assured you're going to try to kill many more people that are innocent. Which in a say ended up being a benefit to us, because had he just targeted the Jews, I don't know what the world would have done. We won't go there. That's not what, it didn't turn out that way anyway. So going back to our theme here, that's the Haftarah. But here's the interesting thing. As you know, nothing is simple with Jews. So it gets even, the plot thickens. So that's great. So we have 52 chapters and 52 Haftarahs. 52 Haftarahs should be based on the theme of that week's chapter. No, says the Talmud, that's not the case. That we read every week, the Haftarah is the theme of the chapter, except there are approximately, I think, 10 exceptions. Maybe one or two more. What are the exceptions? We're not talking about holidays. Obviously, a Haftarah on a holiday is the theme of the holiday. But there are 10 exceptions. When are there? There's actually 11 that I recall right now. The ones that are relevant to us, no. 7, 10, 12, 16 exceptions. And the way the Talmud puts it in a poetic way, it goes like this. that every week you read the Haftorah of the theme of that chapter, except when it comes to the weeks around the 3 weeks, the saddest part of the Jewish calendar, which lead into the consolation. And it says, the Talmud uses these words. It says, Tlosa de Paranusa, 3 weeks that we dedicate to talk about the destruction, about the retribution, you can say. Sad chapters that we read during the 3 weeks between 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av, when the temple was destroyed, followed by Shiva de Nechemta, 7 of consolation, which means 7 works of Torahs whose theme is consolation, and Tarte de Tiyufta, followed by 2 of Tshuva. These are Aramaic. It's Aramaic I'm translating. What's the 2 of Tshuva? Because the 7 conclude with the Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah, which will be not this week, but the next. And then comes the 2 Shabbos between Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot. There's always 2 weeks. So there's Tarte de Tiyufta. Their theme is Tshuva, return, which is the theme of that period in time. So in other words, during these 12 weeks, make an exception. The Haftorahs were not read the theme of the actual chapter. Rather, it's the theme of the time, a period. So we're now in a period of called the 7 weeks. We're actually in the 6th of these 7 weeks, this coming weekend. They're called the 7 of consolation. I've written a few serious articles about how this process, the 3 of retribution or pain, the 7 of healing, the 2 of return, is really a very profound psychological model, system of healing. So long before we have all these modern and contemporary models, it's a model that goes back thousands of years. And the theme of some of these 7 weeks is about song. Sing. Last week we read, "Oh, sing, you barren soul." And this week it begins, the Haftorah will begin, "Arise, shine, and rejoice, O Jerusalem." So these are poetic words that come from the prophets, mostly, either this one is from Isaiah, some from Jeremiah. Actually, no, the 7 are all from Isaiah. And selections that are ones of consolation. I'm not going to go through the whole 7, because if you're interested, I've written about them. You can just email our office. I'm happy to send you. It's really a nice, a very beautiful way of 7 week, a process of healing through anything that you may be going through. What I am focusing, and this is why I'm focusing, because these 7 of consolation, the last 4 are read during the month of Elul, this month that prepares us for the new year. So in the book 60 Days, which some of you may be familiar with, I actually have, during the Elul months, what these Haftorahs signify. But one thing that jumped out when you read them is this focus on song. So we all know music, love, intimacy, they're all hand in hand. They might not be synonymous, but they go together. And the answer is, and the reason is very simple. Why? If you've ever thought about it, because as I said, they're all languages of the soul. Music is soulfulness, and love is soulfulness, and therefore they come together. Now, most of us don't think about it. We just know that music creates a mood. Romantic music, music's of love. Music is a voice of aspiration, of hunger, of pining, yearning for your beloved. Some say that's the essence of all song, is yearning for something. And where more in yearning is there yearning than in love? Some people have more yearning than fulfillment. It's called tension and resolution. So that's the Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim, written by King Solomon, is all about, it's a song of love, romantic, even an erotic song. Many explain that it's a song between the human being and God. But ultimately, as I discussed, I believe in the previous class, that ultimately there's also a yearning to love yourself. And I don't mean in the simplistic way, with self-interest and self-love and so on. I mean loving yourself, really respecting yourself. I know a lot of people love themselves. Do you respect yourself? Would you like to have a relationship with yourself? I don't mean that in a corny way. I mean it in a very serious way. If someone was like you, would you want to know that person? It's a whole different story. We all have this so-called self-love in the sense that your interests come first, and then you're protecting yourself before anyone else. But that doesn't mean you love yourself. It just means, you are selfish. That's not what I'm talking about. Narcissists are focused on themselves. That doesn't mean they love themselves. They just mean that they're focused on themselves. They may not even know what the word love is. So as we discussed, I'm going to discuss now a little further, this word love can mean, as I've elaborated very often, being a need. Today, frankly, most people see love as, well, some see it as a nuisance. They wish they could just get rid of it. That way you have to have all these problems. But many see it as a need. Now, no one's maybe we're going to quantify it that way because it doesn't sound very romantic. Like you meet somebody that you seem to like and you say, hey, I'm in need. It doesn't sound so good. So you have other ways of saying it that sound a little more seductive. So, but ultimately it comes down to that we're in need. It's not like you wake up one morning and say, I want to love. There's something about it that needs love. Whether it's the need of respect, the need of validation, the need of intimacy, the need someone cares about you. Even when we talk about sexuality, even that's not really easy to understand. Why we have sexual needs, why we sexually attracted. So the evolutionists think about it some way, as I discussed a few weeks ago. That it's one of the ways that nature the species must survive, must perpetuate. So breeding is necessary. So there's an attraction between male and female, the sexes, in order to bring them together to perpetuate. If they didn't have any attraction, they would never come together. If they didn't have any needs, why would they want to even interact with each other? So it's nature's way of getting them together. Judaism's taken it as far more, I would say, sublime and romantic. Judaism taken it's two halves of one whole, seeking for the other half. It says God created the human being, male and female, one androgynous creature, and separated them, and therefore the rest of their lives they seek each other. And that's the essence of sexual attraction, romantic attraction. The search for the other part that will make you more complete, or better put, to make you more divine. So it's very much a transcendent experience, as opposed to a carnal or hedonistic or biological need. Now in our world, because we've learned to so-called try to have our cake and eat it too. We've tried to master the art. Can I just have the pleasure without the responsibilities, without the commitment? But in truth, love and sexuality without intimacy is ultimately going to leave anyone empty. That doesn't mean you don't have a moment of pleasure, but it's like anything. Like I mentioned before about music. For that matter, any drug can get you high. But how integrated is it in your life? How good does it make you feel the rest of the day? And how dependent do you become on it? True love is a 24/7 experience. You love somebody, you don't just love them while you're together with them, or while you're getting what you need, or while you're feeling physical or other type of pleasure. It's a complete feeling. It's like knowing that you have someone on this earth that is part of you, part of all your life, even part of your life that is not so romantic. Simple things. You share your life with somebody. Now, some people don't like that idea at all. I could see immediately some people, I'm not going to say in this room, here everybody seems to love that idea, but frankly I can tell you, many rooms you say this statement, and I've done it quite deliberately, and I see some people who you say you share your life with someone. I see some people shrinking back and say, hey, what's so nice about that? I don't want to share my life with somebody. I can rest assured, if that's your reaction, you think where it's coming from. Why wouldn't you want to? Well, one of the main culprits is because you've been hurt by people. Why would you want to share your life with someone that could hurt you? So your natural reaction is, hey, 1 second, I'll share as much as I want to share on my terms. Why would I just share my whole life with someone? It often comes from fear and being hurt. Most of us won't admit it that way. We have all kinds of good reasons. Some people call it, I'm a free spirit. I don't want anyone else controlling my schedule. I want my freedom, etc. But the fact of the matter is, there are people who are very big free spirits, and they see it as a great quality to have someone to share your life, to have someone that you can trust to that extent, that loves you and you love them in that full sense of the way, without compromising your space necessarily. It doesn't mean your individuality is annihilated. It can be a most powerful thing. So it all comes back down to being healthy or not healthy about all these attitudes. So love from a Jewish Torah point of view is transcendence, and so is music. Now, as I said, you can divorce music and turn it into a commercial entity and just listen to it and then move on. Or you can turn music into a tool of transcendence that helps you become a more transcendent human being. So let's elaborate a little more. What does it mean to be a transcendent human being? And why should that even be an aspiration? What's wrong with being an immanent human being, if you wish, What is a transcendent human being like? Well, this word transcendence, just to clarify what I mean by it, because it may be a little esoteric, let me define what it means. Or maybe in simple terms. If you had to classify yourself, what dominates your life? Do you think, are you a life is it controlled by your life by routines, by the monotony of the responsibilities, the burdens, the obligations you have, and that runs your life? You wake up, you'd rather stay in bed or rather just do something you'd like to do, but you have a job to go to, and you've already taken off too long, so you gotta go. Other pressures, other demands that you may not like, but you have no choice. You have to compromise yourself because there's bills to pay, there's commitments that you've made, whatever it may be. You got yourself stuck in a situation. Many people will say that their lives, that is what dominates their lives. And I'm not speaking for anybody here. You have to answer this question yourself. What do we do with our so-called freer part of ourselves if we are enslaved in this way? So many of us do. We compartmentalize. We find these escape moments, whether it's weekends and vacations, whether it's during the day taking a break, whether it's literature, music, art, romance, all kinds of things. Create little oases in a big desert that's demanding so much of us. We have these little spots that we run to, we escape to. Spaces. Some people do it through therapy, some it's through religion, music, of course, as I mentioned. So many different ways. Yoga, meditation, quiet time, just taking a lunch break and sitting some steps, Central Park, whatever it may be. Running, walking. Of course, I should mention watching your favorite shows and the other stuff, which I don't know if that's part of transcendence or part of a routine. You'll have to figure that out, because sometimes routine can take on the shape of transcendence. But true transcendence, by contrast to all of this, is none of the above. It's the ability to feel at home, to feel that you are not bound by anything. You're not totally dependent on anyone. And you really can aspire to and reach something that is completely sky's the limit and beyond. Many of us, when I mention this, I know this is a fact, tell me, I haven't had such a dream since I was 16 years old. You're talking about a very long time ago. They say nostalgia is not like what it used to be, that type of thing. So it's a distant memory. Now, today, I don't have any time for luxury for such dreams. Today I'm consumed, I have a life to live, I have bills to pay, whatever it may be. So, I have to tell you that the fact that we may feel trapped like that doesn't mean you have to be trapped like that. Some of us don't feel so trapped either. We say, that's reality, that's what we're all doing. Walk down the average day in Manhattan down the streets, let's say at lunchtime. Everybody's rushing somewhere. You look around, they have the same life like I have. They got their pressures, I got my pressures. We're all, just different names, different addresses, but it's the same idea. I don't know if that makes you feel better or not, but regardless, that's the story of life. Misery loves company. So if everybody is more or less doing this, it's not so bad, seemingly. Thoreau wrote that he says men, maybe it's only men, but he says most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Some of us lead more for us. Some of us it's not so quiet, but at least quiet desperation. And then, of course, the second half, which is the real killer, where he says, and die with their song still inside of them. Okay, so it's bad enough to live a life of quiet desperation, and then know you're going to die with your song still inside of you. Not a pleasant thought, shall we say. But it's interesting and sad, because we end up becoming victims, feeling we have really no way out. What am I supposed to do? Quit my job? I'm going to get another job, or just from one enslavement to another. What did I achieve? And we really feel we don't have options. I speak now, I can't speak on behalf of everybody, everybody's got their story, but I speak on behalf of many people, knowing what people share, knowing even if they don't share, you can see how people in their lives are mostly not of their choices. Some things, I can't say we have no choices at all. Well, I'll tell you one thing. The Jewish people as a whole and as individually, and the Torah, all came to absolutely, unequivocally challenge this whole notion of everything I just said. Enough bad news. I got to talk about some good news now, right? Desperation, dying, and all that with songs inside of you. The whole point of Judaism and Torah, frankly, I would say the whole point of God, for that matter, is emancipation of the material routines and habits that trap us. That's the definition of transcendence. Transcendence means the ability to transcend and to look up to the heavens and to dream. Not at the expense that necessarily you lose touch with reality, but to really know that you have the ability to reach heaven and beyond. Simple as that. It's not a religious concept when I say the word heaven here. This is the quintessential nature of the soul. Now, if I have to make a case for this, I'm happy to do so. I'm assuming, maybe it's not good to assume, and most of you understand what I'm saying, but I will just elaborate a little more. It could very well be, and I know people who, as we grow older, we lower our expectations. As we lower our expectations, some of the things we dreamt about once, the idealism, we give up on. And then when you hear words of what I'm describing now, you either dismiss it as some naive thing, or you're lucky you feel that way, but I've been burned out, I'm worn out, I don't have, I'm happy if I finish the day and get home and I wasn't killed by a few people or stabbed, I'm also pretty happy. And people say this, and I understand why. Because when you've been hurt a long time enough, it's enough. It's just I wasn't mugged. I don't mean it in a physical way, If I wasn't messed up too many times today, then I'm home at least. I'm not worse today than I was when I woke up I'm not worse at the end of the day than I was when I woke up in the morning. For many people, they made a profit. It really pains me when I hear that, because it means that you start writing yourself off. You lowered the bar so much. That's already success. I'm not saying it in a critical way, but it just shows you how life can hurt people. Hurt people where they have to lower for their own tolerance. They just can't come home and so keep thinking about the big things when they have been beat up so many times. Obviously, if you grew up in a home that the home was a battle zone, you were beat up every day for the words or actions of abusive parents or incompetent parents, or parents who do not know how to validate and love, and just basically constantly dumping on their children all their insecurities and fears and so on, then it becomes increasingly difficult, and we do lower our standards. It's as simple as that. That's how we survive. You can't start expecting things that just will destroy you every time you expect something big and just be slapped again down. So it saddens. Thank God I grew up in a home myself. No home is perfect. They say every home is dysfunctional in some way. But I think there's measures. In my case, my father was an extremely secure person. He didn't have a mean bone in his body. Didn't have capable of even forget about abusing, striking, or anything like that. Very secure, and security is contagious. So all of us in my family grew up with that type of environment. I know you may ask me, wonder what about my mother? I've only mentioned my father. Well, my mother had her qualities. I can't say she's quite like my father in that kind of an area. And as I said, nothing's perfect. My father was not perfect. But today I appreciate it by contrast. The time, you don't appreciate when you're breathing healthy air, you don't appreciate it. You take it for granted. Then suddenly you enter a polluted room or a polluted environment, you see someone else struggling to breathe, you start realizing, hey, this is a big gift you have. Your lungs are working, you're able to breathe. You go to a hospital, someone's struggling to breathe, you realize a breath is a miracle. So this is often what happens. I started seeing things that really were like complete, unbelievably, what should I say? It's completely, was devastating actually. The first time I started teaching this class, I remember. It wasn't even a class, it was just an interaction informal. And I'm going back now, at least 30 years, over 30 years ago. So, I thought I had some experience, but I was a kid. I was a baby, basically. And I didn't really see pain in my life. So, I read about it. Biggest pain I read about was Les Miserables, when I read Victor Hugo's book, And I related to, people living in a misery, and I'm feeling for them. But I didn't really see it, which is a blessing. I was sheltered and so on, and I admit it. And I'm not for good or for bad, but probably for good at the end of the day. So I was able to grow up in my so-called impressionable years, not shaped by pain. Let's put it that way. Which ends up being great virtue ultimately. But I wasn't aware of a lot of things. I remember vividly, first times I was exposed to certain experiences, I was I must say, I was completely shocked. And not because I was shocked, not that I didn't think it's possible, I just was not my experience. I remember vividly someone coming to this class. He lives down in Jerusalem. And he wanted to come, after a few weeks or maybe a few months, he wants to come see me privately. I was in my early 20s, I was he was probably not twice my age, but at least 10 years older than I am. He's coming to my advice. I felt actually awkward. But on the other hand, he's coming to me. If I could help, I could help. I look into, wasn't about me. If I have more information, Torah, experience. And he shared with me something which I couldn't believe it. First I thought he was really lying. Not lying, he was exaggerating. He shared with me the following. He said to me, remember sitting privately across my desk, he says to me, bluntly, straightforward, I learned love from a dog. Okay, I had no idea what he meant. I didn't even know what he's talking about. I listened respectfully, and I was not in any way, I didn't judge him, because I don't have any of that, but I would know what he was saying. Then he tells me, he said, my father was a raging alcoholic. Could be a raving alcoholic, whatever you want to call it. And he would come home really drunk. He would be physical with my mother. Literally, I was the oldest boy. I felt I wanted to protect her. So I would get in between my father and my mother. And he would beat me instead. And it wasn't just beat. He used a baseball bat, chain, the real stuff here. Stuff many of us just know from movies, I hope, not more than that. And he says, sometimes my body was aching, black and blue marks. And I couldn't even stay home because my father was crazed. So I would go out to the garden. We had a kennel with a dog. And I would sleep near the kennel, and the dog would just be there licking me, just soothing me. That's where I learned love. That's where I learned, not from my father, not from my mother. She was just completely a beaten woman. That's where I learned love. And he meant it in a very innocent way, a very pure way. So I remember, when I heard that, I was very, obviously taken by it. And I said to him, to me, I was I couldn't believe it. Because first of all, I wasn't exposed to people, a father, husband, behaving like that. To me, it was out of my league of understanding, even the scope that someone can even, everyone has their temptations, so to speak. We all have our ugly side. But there's some things just not conceivable, something you can't even imagine doing it. And that was nothing compared to the things I heard later. I can't say nothing. As a matter of fact, it helped me later. I'm just mentioning this because years later, in a class, when I was teaching this class, we've had our migrations. Some of you may remember we were on 81st Street and West End, in the Beyond Kloi's Shul there. Remember that? From the alumni here. And I remember I was talking to a class about unconditional love. No unconditional love, the love that's based on nothing you need, just unconditional love. And while I'm speaking, it was a pretty full room, situated differently than this room. It was a long, narrow room. And a guy sitting to my right started mumbling. And as I continued going on, he got louder and louder. He started saying, in a voice everyone could hear, yeah, absolutely. The only love that you can trust is the love from a dog. Those words. And literally he started getting heated and passionate, literally frothing out his mouth almost. You can't trust human love. Only animals. And the place, people were getting disturbed. First of all, I was talking, he was talking, so. Then I got quiet because he had to express himself. So Some people, just one woman I remember from the other side of the room yells at him, "Can you shut up? You came to hear Rabbi Jacobson, not you." And I remember he was like really wounded by her, and he like took his eyes, he squinted his eyes, and he looked across the room at her. And I was sitting here, so he was there, she was there. He's looking at her. He says, "You're so shallow." That was his words. You wouldn't even expect that. Anyway, so I said to him, "Look, tonight we're speaking about human love, canine love. Maybe we'll talk about it another time." He suddenly got quiet. "Yeah, I understand." Good. Move on. That night, after the end of the class, a woman comes over to me, another woman. She gives me a note. Folded note. I put it in my pocket. I go home. I get home, I open it up. She writes the following words. "I've been coming to your class now for 2 years, 3 years, almost every week. I've learned tremendous things about life from you, but tonight I learned something that's greater than them all. How you treated him with dignity. You could have easily dismissed him as being something a little weird. You could have gotten a good laugh. Everybody was clearly that there was something bothering him. And you treated him with this respect, even though he said something which was completely like off the wall." I was very moved by this note, but it brought me back memories to what I heard years ago. I never forgot. You never know what's going on in people's lives. To you it sounds like a dog, love from a dog, animal. What's he talking about? But you never know. You never know what's going on inside of a person. Well, suffice it to say, many years have passed since then. Today, I am no longer naive like that. And I don't know if I'm happier this way, but I've seen what human beings shouldn't see, and I've seen it. Not, thank God, not personally, but I've seen it through others. I will never forget someone who shared with me the first time sexual abuse by a father, and without going into the gory details, that really completely almost devastated me. I couldn't sleep even. I remember getting into my car, driving to the closest bookstore, just to take out a book and read about this. I was like consumed. I remember I asked the person there, what's a good book on healing? And they gave me the book, The Courage to Heal. I don't recommend it to anyone. Trust me, unless you must read it. If you need a book, it is, and it's not because it was explicit. It's not about explicitity and so on, or for mature audience. It's not that point. It's the rawness of pain, unbelievable. But it's a tremendous book, and I know it's helped many, many people because it's so raw and so honest. When you suffer like that, you need much more honesty than regular people need, because it's so all of it is so much shrouded in mystery and secrets and everything. But mostly the twilight zone of what distorts a child's mind when they've gone through pain. How literally darkness seems to them like light, and light can seem like darkness. I mean, completely counterintuitive that you can't imagine what kind of the wires, how they get screwed up when someone plays around on that level. I don't want to say the word plays around. It sounds minimalistic, far worse than that. Now, why am I saying all of this? Because to me the challenge was coming from a so-called more pure environment. And I studied Torah. I always saw, I saw beauty in my life, primarily. And I saw Torah that was always pleasant. I didn't grow up also with negative religious experiences. Unhealthy, dogmatic parents using religion as a weapon or whatever it may be. Or covering up their own fears and their own crap. Pardon the expression. And for me the challenge was, okay, here's a Torah. It's supposed to be the blueprint for life. What does the Torah say about all this dark stuff? It's very nice to talk about Hanukkah and Purim and Passover and Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. These are nice, pleasant holidays. How you eat latkes, you sit around a table, you sing, you dance. It's great, Shabbos. But what about these darker? And that became for me the real compelling challenge. How to take the Torah and address the uncomfortable stuff, the things that nobody wants to talk about. Does the Torah have any wisdom to say about that? Or the wisdom is only when things are nice? And I can tell you, the pain that I've witnessed and what people shared with me and confided has taught me about Torah more than all the thing I ever learned my whole life in yeshiva. I don't say that lightly. I went to yeshiva my whole life, so I studied a few things. Not that I was some type of great student, to be very honest. But that's for another time. Talk about the troubles we did. Like all of us in school, I don't know. I wasn't a goody-goody, let's put it this way. I wasn't this guy that got expelled from school, but I was always like at the edge, made sure that someone else took the fall, so to speak. Not quite like that. But the point is that, but I studied my whole life, and to me, that's where it came alive. I know it sounds weird. It came alive in the darkest moments, when I saw, does it have anything to say? And that's when I dug deeper. I looked into the Torah. Does it address the darker, the abyss, the dark crevices in the human psyche, the ugly places, the places we don't talk about, we don't share, the darkness, abuse, pain, the stuff that, as I said, that's not popular. You know, and to me, that's where I realized the depth of the Judaism and Torah, because it absolutely addressed it. I could tell you 60 days. This book, 60 Days, you may think it's just a nice book about the high holidays. It's a lot to do with what I've learned from painful experiences. And not because life is all about pain, God forbid. I don't think that's the goal here. But pain is part of life. And if you avoid it, or you can't shine a light there, then you're missing a major component. Then it's a truth that's very compartmentalized. It's only true when things are going well. Do you have anything to say to me when the things are not going so well? You know, it's nice to have a God when everything is going well, and you're blessed, and you're popular, and you're prosperous. What about when things are a little dark? Just to give you one taste of this. So I remember reading the Medrash that says that when God appears to Moses the first time, it's in a thorn bush. You know the famous story? Moses is a shepherd. He sees from a distance a burning bush. He goes closer, very weird sight. It's a thorn bush. What's burning? It's a burning bush, and it's not being consumed. He realized this was some sight that he never saw before. And this is where God appears to him for the first time. God speaks to him and tells him, I'm choosing you to go back to Egypt and take your brother and your nation out of this bondage. And Moses goes through a whole debate with God. He doesn't want to do it. I can't do it. I'm not a speaker. I have a voice impediment. On and on, the whole story. So not for now. So everyone asked the question, Medrash asked the question, so why did God appear in a burning bush? What exactly is the symbolism of that? You know, it's not exactly a pleasant place to appear. God wants to make an appearance for the first time to Moses. Should appear with an old fanfare, though, you know, glory. Take him to a beautiful apple tree. There's some beautiful cedars, oak trees, you know. In a lowly thorn bush. That's where God appears. Which, of course, reminiscent to a similar episode. When God gives the Jewish people the Torah, where does He do it? You'd think He'd take them to the most beautiful city in the world, whatever that city may be. You know, there could have been Alexandria in Egypt or Jerusalem. I mean, a lot of cities around. She schleps them into some hot desert. Who knows how hot it was that morning? To give them the greatest gift of all, the Torah. So you want to give someone a gift, what do? You take them to an air-conditioned place, right? Where it's comfortable. You don't want them to remember that oppressive heat. You gave them the biggest gift of your life. Now, they're so similar. So one of the answers in the Medrash is, why would God appear in a burning bush? And this came alive to me through the pain I saw. The answer is very simple but brilliant. Because God anticipated. He knew Moses was not stupid man, just intelligent man. Moses will say to him, you're appearing to me, you know, I'm a free man. I'm not a slave, because he was from the tribe of Levite. The Levites were left alone by Pharaoh because he realized that they were like the scholars, they were considered the more holy ones. So he left the holy people alone. So yeah, it's very nice you're appearing to me here in this nice vision. And you're telling me to go back to Egypt, to the darkness of Egypt, and take the people out, let my people go, so they should come and serve me. Now the first question everyone's going to ask, really, if God is so nice, He wants you to free us, why is He letting us suffer so much? So God does not appear in a beautiful sight. He appears in the lowliest of all bushes, the Medrash says, in a thorn bush. A thorn bush, we all know, is a symbol of pain, a symbol of fruitlessness, symbol of parched, arid desert. And that's where God makes an appearance, basically saying, I am with you in your pain, not just in your joy. Answering, basically preempting the question that Moses would have asked, had it been other circumstances. And you can take a whole lesson just from this. You know, okay, so if God's with us in our pain, why don't we feel it? That's the biggest question. You all know the famous greeting card, where you see these two sets of footsteps in the sand. You know, one is you and the other is God. And then the moments in life were really painful, you only see one set of footsteps. And the guy asked God, so why did you forsake me when I needed you most? There's only one set of footsteps. And God responds, that's when I carried you. So you didn't see me. You see two sets because they're walking side by side. Only those that have survived real difficult situations can tell you the power of God in helping them survive. When you're in the darkness, it's very hard to know. As a matter of fact, it feels like completely forsaken. And it's part of the theme of this discussion. I didn't really want to go this heavy, but I guess I got to get your attention some way. But I will say the following: we're now in the 7 weeks of consolation that follow the 3 weeks of pain and affliction, and it's about song. That was the theme here. Elul is a story of love, but it's not a story of naive love. Like, you know what? Let's escape to some cloud nine and forget about everything. That's not the story. Elul comes after the most painful month of the year, after real suffering. I was just using myself as an example. That it's very nice to hear beautiful ideas from somebody who doesn't know what pain is, doesn't know what darkness is, and they have no credibility. No one can say that about the Jews. We have all the credibility and more than we need. We went through everything. You tell me something we didn't experience collectively. Every type of hell, every type of genocide, every type of persecution, expulsion, whatever you name it. All kinds of creative things starting from the Crusaders and the Romans, and before that and after that, the Egyptians I mentioned, until recently, till the last Holocaust, and all its inhumanity, dehumanization. So with credibility, we've got more than enough in dealing with the abyss. But that's not what defines us. Jews, we've suffered, but we never call ourselves sufferers. Some people, unfortunately, carry that. You have people, children of Holocaust survivors, can tell you about what they have to deal with. But as a collective, the Jewish people are here standing, and many of them extremely healthy, despite what they've gone through, and things made them stronger. We talked about that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. There's a verse in the Torah in Exodus. It says, "Kishayano Esam, as they were afflicted, kach ken yirbu v'ken yifritz v'ken yirbu v'ken yifritz." In direct proportion to that, they flourished, they blossomed. Like the Talmud says, you squeeze in an olive, and that's how you derive, you extract its oil. So the month of Elul is not some just type of nice month of love. It's a love that comes after a lot of pain, and that's why the love can be appreciated most. I remember this class, as you may recall. Thank God, there was that period of the Intifada when the terrorist attacks began, the suicide bombings. So one of the first and more horrendous ones was a Friday afternoon, if you may remember, in Jerusalem. Someone left a bomb under a chair of a cafe, outdoor cafe, and a number of people were killed, and many were wounded. As you know, these bombs were rigged with all kinds of ball bearings and needles and all kinds of other stuff to maximize the damage, in a horrendous possible way. So there was this class, I remember at the end of the class, it was also at 81st Street. So two people came over to me, it was two women, and one introduced the other to me, and she got closer. I saw she was from a distance, very beautiful face. I got closer, I saw the face you could see work was done on it, shall we say. And she shares with me that she was a student in Jerusalem who actually did not tell her parents she's going to study Torah, because they would never let her go, American parents. So she said she's going to Europe for a trip. She ended up in Jerusalem, one of the yeshivas. She was waiting that Friday afternoon to have coffee with a friend, and she was a few tables away from where the bomb went off and it blew up. And it tore her face off, let's call it spade a spade. And she lost her hearing, she lost her smell, and her face had to be rebuilt, basically. Besides all the other damage it did. And she just telling this to me, and she said, my parents, when did they find out it happened to me? They saw my face on CNN, covered in blood. They realized I'm in Israel, I'm not in Europe. Okay, fine. That was not the issue any longer at this point. Whether she would survive all this. So they came with the supportive and all that. She said, so why would God do this to me? I came all the way to Israel to study. And that Friday, this is what has to happen to me. And for months, she says, I was in the hospital, I was in pain. They were soaking me and stuff, dealing with the pain involved. The nerves that were destroyed and all that. And she said, I was literally asking God every day to take my life. What are you leaving me like in shreds like this? I don't know, who needs life? And one morning, she says, I woke up and had this surge of energy. I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to survive, and I'm going to rebuild my life. These were her words that I'll never forget. She said to me, you don't know what faith is until you have nothing left but faith. Those were her words. So I'm not saying this a nice platitude. This is coming from a person who experienced it. I didn't tell her to say this. No rabbi told us. She came to it. He says, and she's living a life. She still has her challenges, obviously, physically, and her hearing, her taste, and so on. But she's here. And, I was like in tears when I heard what she said. You don't know what faith is until you have nothing left but that. It's not something you can just tell somebody who is in pain, because what right does you have to tell them? But someone who's in pain that can say that, it's unbelievable. I told her, I said, you should share this with others. Most people have to hear what you have to say, because you can say, you have the credibility. So the month of Elul for us and the holiday season is not just a nice holiday season, coming holiday season, nice foods, company. It comes with heavy prices. And I'm not saying this to make us feel sad. On the contrary, I'm trying to say that we're not talking about a season that's just coming to escape. This is real music. This is real music. The power to be able to love and celebrate a month of Elul after what we went through as a people, collectively and individually, is tremendous. It's tremendous. It means that you remain a person that knows how to love, and that love is more powerful than any pain. That's the right people you want to be around. And I'm not going to judge someone whose pain has destroyed their life. Who do I judge? Someone that's devastated and they can't pick themselves up. I feel bad for them, but it doesn't have to be that way. And the only way to do that is faith. So the same God that we are so angry at, that forsakes us, whether we like it or not, is the same God that can save your life. The 12-step program came to that conclusion a long time ago. They figured that out a long time ago, relatively in the last century. The Torah, the 10 Commandments begin with that. So they say in the 12-step, what do they say? The first one is something is my life is discovered my life is out of control and I surrender to a higher power. Something like that, right? In the first of the 10 Commandments, what do we say? Anochi, I am your God that took you out of Egypt. Why does it say took you out of Egypt? Because it just said, I'm your God. I'm your God that created heaven and earth. That happened before He took us out of Egypt. Creation ex nihilo, from nothing, is maybe greater than redeeming from Egypt. No. Because for God to create is not a big achievement. But to go into a darkness of Egypt, like I said, a hell. To be able to, Mitzrayim in Hebrew comes from the word constraints. To be able to go there and free one from there. That you're a God that can help us do that, that's a whole different story. So, when you think of Elul in this context, you think of a song in this way, the song takes on a whole different thing. You see, we grew up in, most of us, I would say, I'm not talking about the personal holocaust of our homes and families, if we have anything like that. But in the society we live in, we're not living in a Mitzrayim. We live in a comfortable country. Some of us more comfortable than others. Our greatest pains, I'm talking about materially and physically, are, you don't have as much as you'd like to have. But we're not dealing with living in a concentration camp, or somebody arresting you simply because you're Jewish and killing you, or putting you in prison because of that, or in bondage. We live in a free world. Our challenges are far more internal, much more psychological. That's our biggest holocausts, within, internal. So for us, this whole idea, for us, music is another luxury. How many CDs do you own? How much music do you have in your iPod, on your internet? How many How much did Napster give you? I've got on my computer, I have thousands of songs that I got through Napster from several years ago. I remember Napster. I had some obsession then to hear songs from all countries, so I downloaded songs from Azerbaijan to Zimbabwe, just to see music in different cultures. So I still have it on my thing. So we got music. Music is a luxury today. Music, great. You go to a show, a concert, escape. As I said, some sing to remember, some sing to forget, some do both, or one nice party. Well, song and music for people who've gone through difficulties become a lifesaver. It's a tool. It's not just a fun. The word fun is not a word that people who've gone through darkness really use a lot. And yet, that doesn't mean they can't have fun. It doesn't mean that they can't grow, but it becomes a powerful tool. So when you have expressions like rise and shine and rejoice in these haftarahs of consolation, we're talking about a tremendous tool of soulfulness. When you're living and everything is going sort of smoothly, as I mentioned before, the cracks in our lives, okay, fine. You can convince yourself you don't need a soulful life. But when things are not going so well, you can't convince yourself of that. You either will sink, or you're going to dig deeper and find deeper resources in your soul. You tell me if there's a third option. So why do we have to wait till it gets dark and till the cracks start showing? Because that's human nature. Things are going well, it's all right. So what I'm here to say is that, number one, the expectations that continue to lower for many of us is really a tragedy. Because we all have inside of us, tremendous, tremendous reservoir, resources, that you can go to the greatest heights. It's the saddest thing to hear from people, I've given up on love, I've been hurt too much, etc., etc. I don't say this with judgment. I can fully understand if someone is hurt. They don't want to be hurt. There's a natural inclination. We shrink away from that. But what's even more tragic is not that you were hurt. It's more tragic that you were hurting yourself because you've given up on yourself. So comes a month like Elul that says, I'm not naive. We've been through a lot. We went through this month of Tisha B'Av, 3 weeks, and now 7 of consolation. And you could reach the greatest heights no matter what happened to you in your life. And I've said this to those people that I met that I mentioned before, the one that told me about the love from the dog, and the one that was abused, and I can't tell you how many people. I always say to them, look, I'm never going to understand your darkness and its intensity, because that's of course what you throw out every time I say something nice. They say, yeah, because you didn't go through it, that's why you can talk this way. So I say, no, I'm not here to judge. I don't know how dark, I'll never know your darkness, but I can tell you this. You have 2 options. You're either going to succumb to it and give up, or you're going to reach to something and realize that there's light that's more powerful than your darkness. It's your choice. Now, sometimes I feel bad saying it actually, because I remember one particular person telling me, I pretty much came to peace that I'm going to live a miserable life. Now you're telling me I don't have to. You're making me uncomfortable. She was more at peace with knowing no expectations, and that's that. And now you're telling me that I could have expectations. That was disturbing her. So I remember asking myself, what right do you have to do that? Maybe, she earned her way to want to be miserable. Let her be miserable. Why do you have to disturb her peace, quote unquote? And I still struggle with it. I'll be honest. I've come to the conclusion that, hey, something? She can do what she wants, but my responsibility is to tell her what I see. And if I see the light and I see beauty that she may not see or someone doesn't see, to deprive because it makes someone feel comfortable, something? Since when is comfort the only objective? So yes, you can say, there's that business card. I make happy people miserable people, and miserable people happy. How's that? So I remember there was a guy coming to this class for a long time. He's a young guy, he's a swinger, and all that. And then he stopped coming for a while. He calls me up one day. He says to me, I really loved your class. I don't want you to think that I didn't like what you teach. It really has helped me tremendously. But I'll tell you the truth. I'm still young. Got a lot of options. And every time I go to your class, it makes me feel guilty about everything I'm doing. And I'll come back when I get a little more mature. It was his words. I promise you that I'll get a little more mature and a little more serious. I need to have a little more fun in my life before I get into this intense stuff. Anyway, I couldn't stop laughing. It was like it was hilarious. And I guess he was more addicted than he let on. What do I know? 2 weeks later, he's there at the class. That is. And I smiled and I told the story without saying a name. I said, "There's a guy that made me feel very good this few weeks ago. He said that I make him miserable." How many times can you say, "I feel good about making you miserable"? Anyway, you get the idea. I hope. That doesn't mean if you hang around me, I'm going to make you feel miserable. So that's not a warning or anything. It just, sometimes there's certain things you should feel miserable. But if you're feeling miserable, it's good to feel miserable, and then maybe you'll get out of it. How do you like that? So the point is that there are great heights to be conquered. Who is it that said? Who's the bank robber? They said, "Why do you rob banks?" Because that's where the money is, right? Willie Sutton. Right. Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. They say, "Why'd you climb Mount Everest?" Because it's there. So transcendence, well, right? You're hanging around the wrong place as well. I don't know if that it's an inspiration for you, because there's a mountain that's there. That means you have to climb it. But the fact of the matter, I'll tell you something deeper than that. You and I, we have souls. A soul by nature is transcendent. Transcendent means restless. And never feel bad about being restless. It's a very good thing. It keeps you alive. You don't want over restless, would be too much anxiety. I always say about the cardiologist. You don't want a flat line. You want a heartbeat looks like this. You want balanced. Crests and peaks and valleys. Balanced. And that's life. A little measure of angst motivating you to want more. We're standing in the month of El. I'm here to share. I'm a messenger to share with you the following: that you have potentials that you're completely unaware of, and the worst possible thing is that your life should be consumed with negative energy, meaning fighting demons, and coming to conclusions that you can't achieve the greatest heights. If that's what you come to in your own mind, or that's what you have friends reinforcing that, well, here's someone that's letting out a protest to say it's not true. Okay, and once you heard it, you're going to have to deal with that now. If you didn't hear it, you could say, "Hey, listen, I never knew there was another option." And I say that as a blessing, not as a curse, God forbid. So we've come to the month of El, a month of love, a month that leads into the high holidays that teach us that everything is possible. Rosh Hashanah is about renewal. Yom Kippur is about achieving the impossible, fixing something that was broken, and not coming from people who are just idealistic and poetic and nice. We're talking about hard-earned experience. It's not coming from a naive place. It's an El that is born out of. The Shalah writes, the great middle-aged sage, that Aryeh, which is the symbol, the mazel, the sign of the Leo, the sign of, the saddest month of the calendar, is an acronym for Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Hoshana Rabbah. It's all born out of the pain of. So you're talking about very profound song and melody. And know this, that each of you has a special song in your side of you. Your song is different than any other song. And it's your responsibility and gift to learn to sing your song. It's your voice. Very often we're singing other people's songs, if we're singing at all. Definitely parroting other people's words. We pick up here and there. It's more comfortable maybe. Doesn't rock the boat. You make waves. All these water metaphors, since we're winding down the summer, I must say, rock the boat, make waves, etc. But what's happening is at the expense of your own voice. And I am committed completely. Any way I can help you free your voice and help you find the courage and confidence. I say I mean myself and the whole Meaningful Life Center. Even Velvel as well. Velvel. Because you're half asleep, that's why I'm trying to wake you up. Huh?
Concentrated.
Okay, good. He heard even. That's good. I like that. I dropped it especially Velvel. That's really the word. Are here to help find the confidence, the courage to free your voice and to sing your melody. And next time you listen to a song, and I'm sure that will be soon, and it resonates, it's not just a nice resonating song. Think about it. Why is it resonating? Because it's reminding you about something inside of you. I began tonight saying it's the bearings, the coordinates that keep you going in a world that's confused. A song reminds you that, why is it touching you? It wouldn't touch you if you didn't have something that can be touched. So don't give up on yourself so fast. The fact that I know some people say a song I have no problem with because it doesn't talk back to me. A song I hear it and then I shut it down if I want to. Another person is a relationship. I have to consider her or his needs, etc. A song is only you just take it and then you discard it when you like. Yeah, but it tells you that you have a voice inside of you, and it tells you that you have something that is alive. That's a very good reminder to know when you're feeling dead spiritually or emotionally, and you hear a song, you suddenly feel alive. That means there's a sign of the vital is a vital sign. So think of music that way, as a wake-up call, as a reminder that your soul is alive and kicking, and it's been given to you in your care. And the question you have to ask: what are you doing with it? What are you doing for your soul? What have you done for your soul today and tomorrow? It's your child. And remember, you learn to love your soul, you learn to love yourself, and have a relationship with yourself. Immediately, it will spill over that you can have a relationship with someone else. You can't protect your own soul, your own child. You're going to protect another's. You can protect the child that's outside of you. Now the fact is, sometimes our children, our physical children, or our spiritual children, do yet teach us how to love ourselves as well. So I'm not minimizing that, but it's actual complete. No one can sue you for this, but it's complete neglect if you neglect your own soul. So here is not about eliciting guilt; it's about really feeling the gift of it all, feeling the gift that when you wake up every morning, your contract was renewed. You're given the opportunity to do something different. Not just the same tedious thing, something transcendent. And it could come down to saying a few good words, nice words to a stranger that you meet. It could come down to some volunteerism. It can come down to anything. It's usually not if you do something that's not about yourself. Some form of giving, some form of service, some form of shining outward. That's what does it. That's how your soul begins to come alive. And everyone is able to do that. Everyone. There's a law, an interesting law in the Torah that says everyone's obligated to give charity. Even a pauper. Why a pauper? Pauper has nothing to give. Why he should be taking charity? Because the Torah, the dignity that it affords every person is every person has something to give. A pauper may give a very small amount that cannot give more, but there's no such thing as a person that cannot give. Or to paraphrase, or to use the statement from the Mishnah, who's the wise person? The one that learns something from everyone. Which teaches you two things, that everyone has something to learn, and everyone has something to teach. It's the ultimate dignity to know that you have something to give. That you can take, we all know everybody can take. Giving is divine. Taking is maybe human, even less than human. There's another, we talk about bank robbers. This was a train robber. What was in the Frisco Kid? So he robs the whole train. And before he jumps off the train, who was it, Billy Wilder, whatever, he jumps off the train. Huh?
Gene Wilder.
Not Billy, Gene Wilder, right. Okay, good. I'm glad you know your... how do you know this? No. Man, das ist Chattis von Gdelim. You were very pure when you were a child. So the scene is he's about to jump off he robbed the jewelry and the money from everyone on the train. Before he jumps off, he says, remember the lesson in life, it's always better to give than to take. And jumps off with everybody's money. Okay, so it's a lesson. You learn a lesson even from a ganav, right? From a thief. So my friends, what I say to you is like this, as we continue the month of Elul, another week rather, 2 weeks. And I want to wish you all the power, the courage, the confidence, strength to sing. You can begin quietly in your shower, and then hopefully extend out of there, outward. And to the point you can start singing also to others. The song takes on different shapes and forms. Sometimes actual melody, but it's also the resonance, soulful language. The words of the soul sound like music. And that's why some people can speak and it sounds like music. It resonates like music. So may you not just listen to music, but also create music. And together, each of us an indispensable musical note in a large cosmic symphony. So we all need each other, and we all complement each other to actually create a symphony that this year's New Year, Rosh Hashanah coming up, should actually be, as the name implies, new. As the Arizal and the great mystics write, that a really new, unprecedented energy enters into existence. A new music that has never been played before. May you play that music. Play your music. So this class is dedicated, first of all, happy birthday to our dear friend Eleanor. A gentleman remembers a woman's birthday, but not her age. And the opposite of a gentleman is the other way around. So that's a lesson you should know. So you'll know immediately. And I also want to say dedication is dedicated to you many healthy years, but a memory of Eleanor Spieler. No relation, no connection. And souls live on. Philip will be giving his class next week, and I want to share again with you. Tomorrow evening. He's a musician, talk about music. And may you all play your song, sing your song, help others sing their song this week, and for the many healthy, good years. Thank you very much.